A potentially playoff-changing move in the Pac-12.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. Trinidad Chambliss will be back. Some reactions to his day in court on Thursday, which went in his favor in a big way. And Alabama might cancel a series. You know how I feel, my everydayers especially. Know how I feel about that. If you don't know, stick around and find out on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. They put that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Did you see the announcement, not just of the first ever new Pac-12, or what I'll refer to as the Pac-State conference schedule for 2026 in the football season? Did you see the little wrinkle that they added that we have not seen before in the sport? It's a brilliant idea. So what they've done is laid out, here are the 7 conference games you'll play. Everybody will play everybody. And then there's a flex option in the last week of the regular season. The conference championship game will be played at a team's home site. The Mountain West does it that way. I got to tell you, I'm not as big of a fan of that, but that's back burner for now. This flex option that allows the Pac-12, it can be flex up to 6 days in advance. They can change the matchups and put whoever they want against whoever they want. Now, the home teams are locked into place, but they can move the matchups around. This is a great idea. Great idea. The Pac-12, as I have said many a times before, is the best Group of 5 conference, even though there are just 8 teams, along with the American. I think the Pac-12 has a slight edge going into this year. We'll see how it plays out. If you put these conferences in a list, I don't know that in good faith you could put them any further apart than 1A and 1B. So the American Conference has its league slate of games, and they just play everybody that's there. And you hope that you get quality matchups. And what the Pac-12 is allowing itself to do is rearrange a game or two so that they get a high-profile matchup that doesn't just please their television partners for a rematch game, but also is a little wink-wink, nod-nod to the committee if you've got a couple teams that are pushing for that Group of 6 playoff berth this year. Then this allows them to put those teams against each other in a perfect world. Allows one to prove that they're really further ahead than another if they've already beaten them earlier in the season, or for one team to get a little bit of payback, and for either team to get a resume-boosting win. Because that's the world that you operate in if you're a Group of 6 team. And remember, here's the other thing. You do not have to be a conference champion in order to get into the college football playoff as the Group of 6 team. The Group of 6 is guaranteed a team to get in. You don't have to be a conference champion. So let's just say, hypothetically, a team like Boise State, the 3-time reigning Mountain West champs, and that's not a league I wouldn't think they'll wind up. I'm not making a declarative statement there. Let's say Boise State is rolling along and they've played Fresno State, who I'm pretty high on coming into this year. Let's say they played Fresno State earlier in the season. And as we go about week by week, it's becoming clear that Boise and Fresno State are the 2 best teams in the Pac-12. And they have played once, but they're not scheduled to play again. In the flex week, you can now schedule those teams to go against each other and either give one team the opportunity to get revenge, or give a team, Boise State, let's say, a chance to go 2-0 against another premier group of 5 team and get a resume boosting win instead of playing a potential bottom dweller in the league. Let's say, again, this is just hypothetically, I am inserting placeholders here when discussing the Pac State. I am not making, unless I've said otherwise, I'm not making notions or hints about who I think is good or who I don't like. Let's say Texas State struggles in its first year, and that's who Boise State otherwise would have played. You compare this to what's happening over in the American, where they're hoping they'll get a matchup between a Tulane and a Memphis, or if UTSA gets themselves back into the conference championship discussion, or they hope Army winds up playing insert Memphis, somebody like that. I think this is a really, really good move. And Teresa Gold, the commissioner, so far has done a really good job. And it doesn't do a ton of good to think about what could have been. It's far more useful to think forward. And yet I can't help but wonder, if she had been in place all those years ago, how many things would be different right now? Maybe the answer is 0, because USC really wanted out. UCLA was going to go with them, and that was really the end of it there. Maybe it was always doomed to go in that particular direction. If you go back even further, different decisions could have been made. But operating in the framework of the Pac State Conference that has come together with 8 schools, all with state in the name, it's fantastic. Pac-12 After Dark is returning. You've got your television deal set up, and then you throw in this little wrinkle. Now, is this unilaterally on its own setting the Pac-12 apart from the American or even the Mountain West for that matter? No, it is not. It is, however, something that can make a significant difference under the right circumstances. You could go through a conference season and not have a situation like this arise where it makes that much of a difference who gets scheduled where during the flex week. Because maybe everyone's just kind of beating up on each other. And the Americans got a 10-1 Tulane going into the last week of the regular season with a Power 4 victory, as they had this past year, by the way, over Duke, the future ACC champ. Don't forget all of that. Maybe that team is too far ahead, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Could be. This could be an afterthought sort of rule. I think it's the sort of forward, innovative thinking that you want to have in this space to give your conference the best possible chance to get your teams into the college football playoff. And the opportunity is going to be there. There are Power 4 games littered across the non-conference slate for the Pac-12, regardless of which school you're talking about. The chances to pick up those big-time wins are there. Then they're going to go through the conference slate, and then we're going to have a rematch. And by the way, let's not forget the base fan perspective here. This flex scheduling idea is going to ensure that there's at least one more fun, entertaining, quality football game to watch. I'm here for it. I think it's a great idea. I don't think this is applicable to non-group of 6 leagues. I don't think you will see this anywhere else. I think this is a unique situation with a smaller conference in terms of the total number of teams relative to everybody else. I don't think anyone could do this. I hadn't even thought about it, and when I was reading about it, I went, oh my gosh, this makes perfect sense. If you're a Pac-12 fan, you're excited about it, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. We're bouncing to the SEC for the next segment. Why? Because the clown car ran out of gas. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Hiring isn't just about finding someone who's willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move. Because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certifications, and location, which is indeed very important. If I were going to hire somebody to help me with the show, I don't want someone that can chip in, do a couple things, help out a bit. No, I want someone with actual experience, someone that can fill the job that I'd be hypothetically looking for, and then be able to effectively hit the ground running and help me out. That's what Indeed Sponsored Jobs is here to do. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So, if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way. Do it with Indeed. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like a lot of folks out there, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes all the sense in the world. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling might grab your attention. Maybe you're into speed skating when it's decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different. Even niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. He's back. He's back. Like Voldemort in the Order of the Phoenix, even though he came back before that. Like Michael Jordan, unretiring from the NBA, he's back. Trinidad Chambliss will return, unless something changes. I don't think it will. It looks like this is like the final ruling. This was supposed to be the day that we've been waiting for quite a while, that I told you about last week if you were tuned in to the show. And Trinidad Chambliss returns. So this is kind of hilarious, honestly. And given the information that's been presented and also how this ended, I think the right decision ultimately was made, even though I'm a guy as a general rule that doesn't want to see every player get a 6th, 7th, 8th year of eligibility. Looks like Trinidad Chambliss is on pretty solid ground because of the injuries he's suffered in the past. And the judge agreed, even though the NCAA denied his appeal to appeal the denial of, all that doesn't matter, because what you can often do, as players have found in college sports, there's a linebacker at Montana who's getting a 9th year of eligibility. Couple injury seasons, COVID year in there, he's coming back. Don't know if he's going with his coach or if that's, I guess it would be allowed since his coach left and Montana players could enter the portal. Maybe he winds up at Illinois. I don't know. Bobby Hauck's the defensive coordinator at Illinois. If you missed it, I talked about it on a recent episode of the show. Anyway, Trinidad Chambliss is back. And this puts Ole Miss right into the national title discussion. And it's crazy that it's transpired like this. It's not the first time, though. It's not the first time that the NCAA has been taken to the woodshed in the courtroom because they said no, and then they said, no, we won't reconsider after we said no, and a judge said, yeah, you're wrong, he gets to play. Not the first time that this has happened. The NCAA doesn't have a 0% win rate, but boy, it's not very high. They're not going into the Hall of Fame with this rate of victories in the courtroom. So it was so apparently not close. This is my favorite part of the entire discussion, all the drama, everything that's unfolded. My favorite part about this happened on Thursday. First of all, the live tweet play-by-play that was taking place from a myriad of national reporters was incredible. Secondly, it was so lopsided that apparently the NCAA's lawyers left the courtroom before the verdict was rendered because they knew they were toast. So if you're someone that has a qualm or an issue with Shambliss getting this extra year, I get it. I'm just telling you, there's no legal standing there because they walked out. They rage quit. They got down 4-0 in the first half in a game of FIFA, and they rage quit and left the lobby. One of the most incredible things I have heard in all of these legal matters. And now they're going to go try and figure out the Joey Aguilar case and try to stop him from playing another year of college football. I think the Vols are much more well suited to have less of a drop-off if Aguilar doesn't return than Ole Miss was. I mean, this is literally a national title-altering move in college football, and it happened in a courtroom, but Shambliss is back, and he's going to be one of the Heisman favorites, and he's going to be able to lead Ole Miss as far as that. They were one drive from the national title game. They needed one stop from their defense. One. And they would have played for a national championship. No reason that can't happen again. If you don't believe me, believe Locked On Ole Miss host Stephen Willis.
Trinidad Chambliss was cleared today by Judge Whitwell in Calhoun County, Mississippi, granting him a 6th year of eligibility and a 4th year of competitive football. After it was judged by the judge that the NCAA ignored their own bylaws and acted in bad faith against Trinidad Chambliss. It was like an hour and 15-minute long read of a verdict. It's basically an appeal-proof verdict as well. So Trinidad Chambliss is going to be the starting quarterback for the Ole Miss Rebels in 2026. So what does that mean? What does that mean for Ole Miss? That means that Ole Miss has the best quarterback potentially in the country, at least in the argument for it. He finished 8th in the Heisman Trophy last year with no promotion for it. The best running back in the country with Kewan Lacey, a finalist for the Doak Walker Award a year ago, and everybody saw Lucas Carnero in the Sugar Bowl for Ole Miss. So one thing that is very interesting is this is a top 5 team coming back for the Ole Miss Rebels, and they are ready to compete. It's one of those things like, look it up. Where is the national championship game? And that is a legitimate conversation. Now, the schedule for Ole Miss in 2026 is going to be tougher than it was for Ole Miss in 2025. It is. But Ole Miss in 2025 is going to be a worse team than they are for 2026, with a better defense and positions being acquired and retained to make a run. This roster talent is pretty special, pretty close to the 2024 list that was recruited for Lane Kiffin and those guys before they didn't make the playoffs. This was a big day. And if that judge's verdict reading would have gone on for 15 or so more minutes, I mean, he might have broke down the whole NCAA as far as problematic rulings by that organization's bad faith, not taking care of the student athletes. It was basically a list of grievances that you almost could not even dream up. And Calhoun County, Pittsboro, Mississippi will always be a place that holds a special place in the hearts of Ole Miss Rebel fans because of today's eligibility hearing where Trinidad Chambliss will get his 6th year. National championship season reloading. We'll see how it goes.
Fun fact, just because I know people love getting a little peek behind the curtain, Steven emailed me that video for my show, which I, of course, appreciate him doing because we want to hear from the man himself, and we'll talk to him next week on the show. He emailed it to me with the tagline, "This might need some editing, LOL." Well, he wasn't wrong. He also wasn't wrong that Shambliss would likely be Ole Miss's quarterback this year. So Deuce Knight can sit and wait. Shambliss is there, and Rebels fans feeling pretty good in Oxford. I cannot wait for Lane Kiffin's return trip. Cannot wait. I tell you what I can wait for and hope I I actually hope I don't have to wait for what I'm talking about next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. I am going to the Trinidad Chambliss legal case. If you haven't heard, you should have by now, but if you haven't, Trinidad Chambliss was having his day in court and did what he needed to do and sent the NCAA lawyers out of the building before the verdict because they knew, not going to get this one done. So he's back for Ole Miss. They're right back in the national championship discussion. These moments remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the field and in the courtroom, obviously, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit mentality. And Trinidad Chambliss certainly showed that here. They put that same passion at Mazda into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. The reason I say I don't want to wait for what I'm talking about now is because if I'm waiting for something to happen, that means it'll eventually happen, and I don't actually want this to happen. So Paul Finebaum said he believes Alabama is going to try and get out of the home and home they have with Ohio State for 2027 and 2028. Now, on this program in the past, I talk about scheduling a lot because when these incidents arise, I believe they should be called out because it is not good for the sport. And by the way, just tying this back to the Pac-12 segment that I did earlier on today's show. Anytime there is a suggestion that college football games have to be scheduled this far and you can't do it quickly, the Pac-12 is literally going to decide up to 6 days before who's going to play where for an entire week. People can figure it out. It is not an obstacle. There is just there is a difficulty. There is an inherent difficulty to changing things fundamentally in the sport. Now, this is not actually new. If Alabama got out of the Ohio State game, they would have to find another quality opponent because Alabama is in the SEC, and they're one of the three leagues, and every Power Four should be like this. Big Ten. Everybody's got to play a Power Four non-conference opponent. It's one of my favorite things. I feel as if I've spoken that into existence over the last couple of years. Just trying to fight the good fight and give you all more games that are worth watching all year round for the greatest sport on planet Earth. So, Alabama, if they were to buy out of the game, the logic of it is very clear. If you replace Ohio State with Purdue, just as a random example, or you throw in Colorado, or we'll see what Oklahoma State becomes under Eric Morris. Yeah, you can find a number of programs that are a lot easier than Ohio State. I think this would be a blemish on Kalen DeBoer at Alabama if they decide to get out of the game. It gives me major Lincoln Riley at USC vibes, who wanted to cancel the LSU series. And of course, they're not playing Notre Dame, which USC fans will tell you is Notre Dame's fault. Notre Dame fans will tell you it's USC's fault. And I'll just be the adult in the room that says, I don't care who started it. You need to end it and figure out how to play again. But Lincoln Riley, going into the 2024 season, didn't want to play LSU. They tried to get out of it and couldn't. However they attempted to make that work, it didn't go for him. And guess what? He won the game. It's one of the best non-conference wins, or maybe just one of the best wins, period, of the Lincoln Riley era. And I cannot stand these coaches at major brands in the sport that are trying to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge competition? Alabama, I don't care if it's Ohio State. You should welcome the challenge if you're Alabama. Do I see the logic? Of course. Do I think it sends the wrong message? Also, yes. Those thoughts are not mutually exclusive. They can very easily be held at the same time. I know because I'm holding both of those thoughts right now as I record the show and for the rest of my entire life. Now, where I'll defend Kalen DeBoer here is my next point could very easily have been Nick Saban would have never run from a challenge like that. Nick Saban manipulated the schedule as well as anybody in college football. Because Nick Saban didn't travel to the West Coast or play a lot of true road games. They play a lot of neutral site games that were not always very far. Or people would come to him. They didn't too often. They went to Texas last year, the 4-team playoff, and both wound up making the 4-team playoff. Bama is the SEC champ. Texas is the Big 12 champ. And Texas got in because they had that head-to-head win on the road against Alabama. But until that Texas home and home, Alabama didn't do this very often under Saban. So I understand the logic from Kalen DeBoer 100%. Tell me that you would not be, as a college football fan, which is who I am looking out for. It is not my job to protect coaches or programs or anything of the sort. Tell me you are not, as a college football fan, dialed in to Alabama, Ohio State 2 years in a row. Chef's kiss. Remember, under my scheduling model, if college football were to adopt it, where you level out the 4 conferences and then you play a 2-year rotating conference challenge based on the initial year's starting point of final conference standings, Ohio State and Alabama actually would have played if that series had begun this year, because they were both the runners-up in their conference championship games. They would have started a 2-year home and home this year. I'm just throwing it out there. So do I love the message it sends? No. You're supposed to be Alabama. Do I understand the logic? Of course. Of course. Should teams be able to control this and cancel these series? No. Absolutely not. But that's the way it's going to be until we get a college football czar. I got time. Give me a call. I'll be cheaper than the other candidates. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.